Shalom Aleichem. This is a tribute to Rabbi Yosef Shaul Muskal, who passed away on the Tzemach Tzedek's Yortzeit, Yud Gimel Nissen, and the Tovus Nishmasai, and for the family and a personal friend, I'd like to share the following few tidbits that I had opportunity over the last 25 years to spend time with him in Borough Park in our base Menachem Shul. Rabbi Yosef told me he was born, I believe, in the Bronx, and he grew up in the Bronx, and he became close to Rabbi Rottenberg, who was the Kosener Rebbe, or came from the Chasidim, the Hungarian Chasidim known as Kosen. They have today a shul in Borough Park and elsewhere. And he told me this because once I asked him, Rabbi Yosef, why do you have payas behind your ears? He learned in Bedford and Dean Lubavitch Yeshiva. Yet from the time of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the late 1940s, he came into the yeshiva. And generally, Lubavitch Chassidim, that American that learned in Lubavitch in the 40s and 50s, but derech klal, we don't wear payas behind our ears. So he told me that it's because he was close to Rabbi Rottenberg in the Bronx, and he wore payas behind his ears. So he told him to wear payas behind his ears. So till his last day on earth, he had payas behind his ears. And I think it's not just an insignificant point, but rather it shows you what the person's about. That's something that he got in his youth when he gravitated towards Chassidishkeit, Chasidim. And that lifestyle, this was something that he adopted. So although later he went over to Lubavitch, he became a Lubavitch Chassid, he didn't drop it. And I think the message is clear for all of us. Rabbi Yosef was a glazier, and he told me that he actually had opportunity to change the mirrors in the Rebbe and the Rebbetzins house, I believe. And he also did some work in the mikveh. Over the years, he learned in Bedford and Dean as a young boy, I think in like 48 and 49. And he said that when the Frierdiker Rebbe Levaya, he didn't even know about the Levaya because no one told the little boys about the Levaya. Only after the Yudel Krinsky, Rabbi Krinsky, who was a little older than him, was a Lange Jordan, he was a friend of his, and he told him about the Levaya. So whether he was at the Levaya or not, I don't recall now, but I think he said he wasn't. I don't remember. But he told me that the Lubavitch, in other words, no one was pushing Lubavitch in Chabad. We can't imagine it today. But nevertheless, he went into the 1950s and with our Rebbe, and he became a full-fledged Lubavitch Chassid. His son, his only boy, Mendel, is a shliach of the Rebbe in Wellington, Florida. And Taira Jungerman, he married one of Reb Motl Kazlina's daughters. Motl Kazlina happens to be was a best friend of my shver, Reb Chaim Serebransky, so they were like soulmates, soul brothers, very, very tight from childhood in Russia, Kharkov. And anyway, Rabbi Yosef Muskal, the years in Borough Park, there were times. He was the life of the party in our shul. He lost his wife 22 years ago. He didn't remarry. And he kept himself young by hanging out with the young chevra in shul, with everyone. Everyone was younger than him, pretty much. And he was a freilich yid. He was a happy Jew. He was, a smile, a joke. I remember once talking about Shlomo Carlebach when I was writing my book about Shlomo Carlebach, the real Shlomo. And he knew Shlomo, and he used to go to Shlomo's concerts, and then we spoke about that. I was able to pick up from him personal experiences that he had with people that I, was writing about from way back. And he was a good source of information, kind of to say it the way it is and to hear the emes, the truth. He had a liking to Chassidische Hergeshim, Chassidische feelings. I remember Reb Leibel Olten soll sein gesund, the Mashpi in our shul, would always kid him. He was, in Kovetz Lubavitch, it says that he went to Chazal Chassidus together with everyone else in the 50s, 55, 56. So Reb Leibel would always take the sefer out and say, Yosef, come here. And he says, are you going to Chazer HaMaimer at Mincha? He says, me? Chazer HaMaimer? I'm Shaykh Chazer HaMaimer. And Leibel would show him, you Chazer Chassidus when you were a Bacher, so you have to do it now as well. And he would always taunt him about it, And of course, all in good spirit. As my books were being written about Chassidim and other communities and different things, he really enjoyed reading them, and he asked me questions. And I could see that there was a hergish there, a regish, a feeling for a Chassidischkeit, a Chassidish feeling. His one sister, his sister married Moshe Levertov. Another sister married Chaim Aaron Cooperman. The old Mishpacha, he has another brother, old Mishpacha, Lubavitch Chassidim. But Rabbi Yosef, in our shul, on one hand, he can give a shtickle musar, but with a smile. And, he was around shuls. I'll give you an example. Rabbi Ushpal, our Rosh Yeshiva, Lubavitch Yeshiva, he was the Rav of the shul of Anshe Lubavitch on 12th Avenue, 41st Street. Let's hope that there's a resolution and a good oifim for that shul. So he told me that he went to daven there, although he lived not in that neighborhood. He lived, I think, the 17th, and this was 12th and 41st, a 20-minute walk or so, 15, 20 minutes. Because he was a Talmud of Rabbi Ushpal, he wanted to support his Rebbe, Rabbi Ushpal. That's a hergish, that's a feeling. I could daven in other shuls. Rabbi Simpson's shul was much closer to him, Lubavitch's shul. No, he went to Rabbi Ushpal's shul, because this was his Rosh Yeshiva, and he had respect for him. And he told me stories from that shul, people walking in on Shabbos, you can hear the car keys and other such things. They weren't, it was a different time, different period. My point is that this was an individual, Rabbi Yosef, who it was geschmack to talk to. It was a pleasure to talk to him. Business. Different things came up. He gave business advice. He taught me things, not that I'm in business, but just how to go about certain things. He shared his experience, and I learned from him. I always remember, I think his Yom Haledes was on Shivasa B'Tammuz, and he would give the break the fast, give Shivasa B'Tammuz. It wasn't Stam break the fast. He gave blueberries, and he gave different types of foods that you wouldn't expect. Or the next day he would make eggs. It was all done in a very, very, beautiful way of homegrown and warm and warm. And these are some of my recollections with him and his staying young. So he was like the life of our shul, even though everyone else was younger, but he was the life of the party because of his persona and his attitude and his freilichkeit. His son-in-law is a friend, Dr. Yitzchak Kufer, married his daughter Chani, and they're part of our shul. Their children, they're married and families. Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Yosef was able to have doiris of Yiddish Chassidish Nachas. His other daughters, some live in Kensington and Flatbush. It's a wonderful family, and Rabbi Yosef Shaul was and is the backbone and the firebrand of this family. So it's before Pesach, and you'll hopefully see this video Chalamoid, if it's whatever the time is. But say an extra kapitel Tillim for the Neshama, learn some Mishnayos, give extra tzedakah, Yosef, Shaul, Muskal, all of Sholem, the Kitzer, Ano Sheikh, Ofor, V'hu B'teicham, with Mashiach's coming, Amen v'Amen.